The early games in the Premier League on Sunday. Gentlemen, shall we start with 13th against 12th or 11th against 14th?
Your decision, MD. They're so exciting, aren't they? You go for it.
Mark Donaldson, Luis Miguel Ecehgaray, Janusz Michallik with bags under his eyes after a whirlwind trip to Europe. So let's get to these two games. Let's start at Old Trafford. Man United against Crystal Palace. Janusz, you and I have done so many of these, and sometimes they'll say, oh, it's not really a surprise, is it? But I've said that to you so often when Manchester United lose at home. However, did they deserve to lose at home today with the performance they put in?
Just two thoughts came to my head in the beginning of the game, really, because if you remember, in isolation, if I watched this game, there were a lot of, there's some positives, especially in the beginning of the first half, couple of chances, Mainu hits the post, right? Garnacho came close. And in the second half, it was a great save by Dean Henderson. Actually, two saves, one on Ugarte and before that, I think it was Bruno, right? So, usually great teams eventually find a rhythm, right? But after each of those, early in the first half, then Palace came into the game. There were always strong teams. Strong teams know how to manage the game, and same thing in the second half. And normally we say that about big clubs like Manchester United used to be, and like Liverpool. But the bottom line is, for me, the Manchester United just have to stop embarrassing themselves, because that's what it is. None of that would have changed. But I think if that good start was then maybe, if they went ahead and won this game, then at least we can talk about, that little momentum, confidence. They're building towards the next season. But in the meantime, they are still Manchester United, who have what I think is a very good coach that just, I mean, I don't even know what to say, because, I looked at the table and Palace is just, that's the crazy thing. They're just 1 point ahead of Manchester United, and they are 5 times the team of Manchester United. Not once, not twice, but 5. You saw that strength, that power, physicality, Mateta, 6 goals in 5 games, whatever it is. Didn't you get an impression that when you were watching this, there isn't one player that's capable of scoring goals for Manchester United? I mean, not even once, consistently anyway. So, I mean, unbelievable mess.
Yeah, there was one instance near the end of the game where Bruno Fernandes has probably gone 15 yards forward and then kept the ball and went 15 yards back to give the ball away. And it kind of summed up Manchester United today. Elemi, I'm also cognizant of the fact that, Manchester United, massive club, known the world over, lose at home again. But a lot of the time, maybe too much focus is on them. So I want to talk a bit about Crystal Palace. Now, Mitchell and Munoz sounds like an Anglo-Hispanic law firm. Their defense is pretty good, but they're not bad going forward as well, are they? And the way that Glasner plays, he really gets the most out of his wing-backs.
Yeah, that law firm's not winning anything, any cases. But yeah, I like the way you hear it. I'm so glad we focus now on Palace, because as bad as United were, and Janusz is totally right about how Palace are 5 times better. Palace, by the way, 2 league losses in January and December. They're not a sexy team, and we're not so much recounting so many victories, but 2 losses in 2 months. Oliver Glasner has them very organized. 2 very good midfielders protecting that back line. Munoz, who in my opinion was in Copa America's best 11, he's just such a wonderful attacking fullback to watch. Mateta, when he's on form, he can deliver. And today, to me, was all about what Palace did as opposed to what United didn't do. We can talk about it day in and day out about the Red Devils. But to me, Crystal Palace today were very good. And the reason, there were many reasons, but a main factor why United didn't get anything out of this game was because Palace imposed themselves in here, even when they didn't have the ball. It was a very well-organized team. Now, obviously, they're still going to climb up the table. And, I'm not saying that, they're going to get Europe anytime soon. But the fact that there's a project that's being built, and they've only lost once in 2025, and today proved to me that this is a very good team when they get their stuff together. There's talent everywhere, and they're very well organized. So well done to Palace. For United, I mean, listen, like they've lost against at home at Old Trafford. Forget about the fact that this is a kingdom anymore. They've lost to Liverpool, Tottenham, Forest, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Brighton, and now Palace at home. And Amorim, when he said at the very beginning of this, this is going to get worse before it get better. You think? And the fact that they have no legitimate striker speaks volumes as well. Now, Licha Martinez's injury makes it even worse for them as well.
Yeah, look, we will talk a lot more about Manchester United, but for now, the focus is on Palace. Janusz, as a former player, riddle me this and explain this. So in the 12 games that Palace have played at home, they've won 2. And in the 11 games they've won away, or played away, sorry, they're unbeaten in 8. They always strike me as a team that is better suited to play on the road. Why would that be?
I don't know if that's true. It may be very well, but
the league table says that 2 wins out of 11 at home and 8 of 11 unbeaten away.
But I think that if we remember how the season started, I mean, Oliver Glasner was gone. I thought 100%. I'm thankful I didn't put any money on that. Right when the season starts like this, and you're looking for solutions, and you're looking, a piece of the puzzle, and you have key players like Eze, injured on and off, and but all of a sudden Mateta is your main guy, which, if I remember in the beginning of the season, that wasn't necessarily the case, right? I don't have an answer for that, because usually the seasons are not so up and down. Now you can say it's Crystal Palace, it's always going to be that way, but we remember they always bleed players, some key players as well, and I think they needed to figure things out in the back. As I mentioned, Dean Henderson today, but he's been a rock. Lacroix, I mean, what a big surprise for me, right? And Chris Richard today playing very well. So I just think that, I don't want to say it's a one-off, because we all know Selhurst Park. I mean, it's a great atmosphere. I don't buy into the fact, if anybody says, I don't think you're saying that, is that the home supporters pressure. I don't think so. So I think it's just been topsy-turvy, and it's just now that I think on that good run, the manager is figuring out his team.
When you think as well, LME, they lost one of their best players in Michael Olise to Bayern Munich, and
before that, it's not easy for these teams,
Exactly, and you talk about them being a non-sexy team, and you're spot on as well, LME, because they're a side a bit like Nottingham Forest and Brighton. That it's only Nottingham Forest, it's only Brighton, it's only Crystal Palace. How do these teams go about getting more respect from more people, or do they not want it because they can go about their business quietly, get results like this, and no one really takes them too seriously?
Yeah, good point. I think for Palace and for other teams, speaking of Forest and stuff, to me it's about consistency and finding an identity. Forest did exactly that with Nuno Espirito Santo. They found an identity. You know exactly what you're getting against Forest, and if you don't beat them, it's because they know who they are. And I think that's what's happening with Palace right now. Glasner is getting them to understanding that. I remember the last day of the season when Villa played Palace, and they played us out of the park. And you can say, okay, last day of the season, Villa got the Champions League or whatever. No, there was an idea that was being created then. And then Glasner got his preseason to work on it, a few other additions. You mentioned Michael Olise leaving is a massive thing, but the most important thing for a team like a Crystal Palace is to find an identity, be consistent with it, and then impose it. And I think today is a perfect example of that. Today, Palace enter that game knowing, okay, we know what's happening. We know the inconsistencies with the opponent today. We're going to impose ourselves, be resilient, be strong, have a really good defensive unit in front of our back four. We're going to push Munoz going forward. Mateta's feeling good. Let's go for it. And that's exactly what they did today. And they did it really well. Now it's about consistency, making sure that you don't just do that against United, but you do it at Selhurst Park and you keep going.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's great getting wins at Old Trafford, and we've seen City win at the Etihad against Manchester City in the past few years as well, and then they'll throw in a right plop of a performance in a home tie that everyone expects them to win. You're like, this is the team that won at City and won at United. Okay, Janusz, Manchester United. We'll get to their new signing in just a second. But for me, is this like something that gets recycled? And it's in a different guise. It's the same old, but it's wrapped up differently. They've got a new manager. I'm trying to find another way to approach a Manchester United topic of problems that they have now that hasn't already been discussed. So you can ask for patience, but you ain't going to get that, are you?
No, and as much as I like Amorim, I mentioned that early, he hasn't found a solution yet. He's been there. This is a while. I mean, we have other examples where coaches, even if you mention Palace, right? Terrible start, supposedly not as much talent on that team, and teams find ways, right? If you look at the teams above them, speaking of consistency, right? Over the years, they have been consistent. The one thing about Manchester United, they are consistently bad. and that's an issue. Well, it is an issue because, the culture of winning, which is something they had for 20, 30, 40, whatever you want to say, has always been there, right? It's a habit. Winning is a habit, and losing can be just a habit as well. And that's the problem with Manchester United right now, because I think you can eke out some results out of any bet team. And we have great examples in this league of the smaller, not so sexy clubs. And right now we see a stubborn Amorim, who knows very well, just like everybody else, because he speaks about it openly, he doesn't have the players to suit his system. Well, every coaching school you go to, right, what they say, you set up the system depending on the players that you have. And I'm not saying he knows better. He's much better coach than I am. But he's got to at least try, give this something, give something to these players. That plan B, maybe different configuration, maybe 4 in the back, whatever it may be. He hasn't done it for me, and that is something that I can't understand for life, unless he does he has that guarantee. No matter what happens this season, we'll get you the players in the summer. I don't see how, because he's got to get how many you guys think? 7? Yeah, 7 or 8 players. So if we ask questions of Amorim, we should have the right to do it based on what we see week in and week out.
He does need help in the transfer market. And a story that's just been published on ESPN.com by our very own Mark Ogden, LME, has Manchester United looking at Matthias Tell of Bayern, who Spurs were after but couldn't get a deal done, and also Christopher Nkunku. Now, right now, those are 2 players who are being speculated with moves to Old Trafford. One deal that was done, and he was presented before kickoff, was Patrick Dorgu. Now, 30 million or so, with 5 million in add-ons from Lecce for the Danish international left wing-back. I know you're doing a piece for Deportes and ESPN.com. What can you tell us about Dorgu and how he's going to fit into this Manchester United side? When's he likely to be involved? And what about Nkunku and Tell? What's the latest with that?
Yeah, to begin with Dorgu, one of the main things that I've been finding out about him specifically as, he fits the Amorim system, which is obviously it's not just for the present, but just for the future. This is a left-footed Danish player. He made his debut with Denmark in the Nations League last year. He's still young, 20 years old, but through the progress at Lecce at Serie A, they have identified him as a very strong, very willing sort of wingback who actually, he's a left-footed player who can play pretty much anywhere, definitely in his young career. He's played at left back, left wing, right wing in Serie A this season. Not throughout even his career, but Serie A, just this season alone, he has played all those positions. So I think that really suits Amorim as he builds it, especially in the summer when he has more time to do this. Some people, like to compare him a little bit to a young Gareth Bale, just because of like that versatility, but at the same time, that pace and that agility and that strength. And obviously, I think that we have talked about this right here as well, MD, that, Amorim, what he needs, especially in his system, is really good wing backs that can facilitate everything that Man United want to do. There's other things now as well that they need, of course, specifically up front. So I think Dorgu will be one of those players that can help, but it's not going to be this quick solution. It's going to take time. This man is coming to the Premier League in a precarious situation for Manchester United. It's going to take time. In terms of Tell, he's clearly talented, but again, my question mark on him is the fact that he's played 344 minutes for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga and the Champions League, and he's had 0 goals or assists. I know, I get it. He's young and there's a pecking order, but is that what you need? Because, projects are one thing. Somebody that can help you right now is another. I like the Nkunku idea. I think that should be something that, because we know what he can give. So those are the things that can happen there. Today we saw Mainu playing as the striker / false 9, Garnacho on one side, Amadiel on the other. So they clearly need somebody that can get them goals. But as of now, Dorgu represents what Amorim really wants, which is the future, not just the present.
We're very fortunate to have the president of the Christopher Nkunku fan club with us today in Janusz Michallik.
Look,
Your boy would do a job at Man United, wouldn't he?
Yeah, part of me thinks if they get Messi and Ronaldo in their prime, I'm not so sure, because they're so, because it's funny. I get it.
Is it though? How funny is it?
Wingbacks are important, right? For his system, and Dorgu, I've seen him a little bit, not much, but that's a lot of pressure. But that's okay. At least Amorim has history at Sporting with young players, getting them out of academy reserves, and this is where we are with Manchester United. It's a total rebuild. But that's why I mentioned the total, because if I look in the back, a million questions about just about everybody there. Questions about Onana, center of the pitch. I mean, if you're going to play three in the back, right? I'm still not convinced about Huarte. I could have some questions about Mainu sitting deeper. I'm not saying that I liked him as number 9, but I didn't hate it, but maybe a little bit more, right? So there's so much to do that I just don't know. But in terms of Nkunku, look, he had a bad season supposedly. Is he still leading Chelsea in goals? He's probably close over there in all competitions. He had injuries, but he's proven, right? I mean, we've seen it at Leipzig, we've seen it in Bundesliga and Champions League. So I mean, that's a start, because at some stage you got to get somebody that nobody's going to question, right? At least we can go historically and say, this is an explosive player that can score goals. So that would be, in my opinion, a good start. But do you guys believe in it? Because I'm not so sure.
Well, the other thing is as well, how many more talented projects can you sign before you have to actually get the finished product and a little bit of spine in the team? Because that right now, LME, just quickly before we move on to Brentford against Spurs, that's what's lacking. Goals are lacking, leadership is lacking, and ability to keep a clean sheet at home is lacking as well. Apart from that,
yeah, do you remember when our friend Gab Marcotti was here and he was so upset that I was criticizing Rasmus Højlund? I wasn't criticizing Højlund. I was criticizing the fact that if Højlund is a project, that's not what United need right now. And by the way, sometimes I feel there's such a tunnel vision when it comes to trying to find a striker. There's plenty of talent out there that can be earned. It's just that sometimes I feel like these clubs are just focusing so much on one particular type of player and not thinking about something else. They don't see the forest for the trees, is my point. So yes, I agree with you. I just think, projects are one thing, but what do you want out of this season, Manchester United? Because very quickly it's going to get worse before it gets better, as Amorim has said.
First and foremost, you need soldiers in order to build a good team, right?
Especially for Amorim.
If you're going to go to war, you got to know who you want sitting next to you, right? And who you can trust. So you need that. And in my opinion, there isn't enough of that.
And one of them is really hurt now. And Licha Martinez came off on a stretcher. So
yeah, we'll get an update on that ESPN FC tonight on ESPN Plus.